Welcome everybody. I see there's an awful lot of you, including, I'm told, somebody in Singapore, or where it's currently 2 in the morning. So a very big welcome to you. So today I want to talk about using virtualization in Windows 7, what it is, why you might want to use it, and how you can use it. But first of all, who am I? So I am the author of Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out. There we go. The slide working now. The author of Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out from Microsoft Press. My free Windows 7 Power Users Guide is still available on my website to download from thelongclimb.com. I'm writing several books about Windows 8. I'm just working on those at the moment, so that's keeping me very busy, and I'm a Microsoft's Most Valuable Professional MVP awardee, which is absolutely wonderful, and certainly makes you feel good. So what are we going to do today in this presentation? Well, I've split it into 5 sections. In the first part, what is virtualization? Why do you want to use it? Moving on to what the various virtualization options are in Windows 7. Sorry, if I repeat myself, just bear in mind that it's Groundhog Day today. We'll move on to the benefits of virtualization, then talk about virtualizing XP, which is probably what you're most likely to want to do. And then we'll look at virtual hard disks in Windows 7, which may not be something that you're familiar with, but we'll have a look at that. So let's start with what is virtualization and why would you want to use it? So virtualization, as I say here, is running one operating system within another. So you boot your computer into its standard operating system, but if you want or need to run another operating system, perhaps a different operating system, you can run it within your operating system in the way you would a piece of software. And the virtualization client, the software that manages this process, is effectively just a piece of software that either, and we'll look at various options, either completely simulates a PC or emulates bits of a PC and actually allows this virtualized operating system access to your computer's physical hardware. So here we can see in this example we have a Windows 7 desktop and we have a virtualized environment with Windows XP Professional running in it. Now I mentioned that there are different types of virtualization. So let's have a look at these. Now this is simplistic what I'm doing here, because there are actually 4 or 5 different categories of full full and partial virtualization. But we'll look at them in more general terms. So with full virtualization, all of the hardware in a computer is simulated. So the virtualized operating system and all of its software doesn't actually have access to your physical hardware. Now this might be useful for some people. Let's say, for instance, you're a security researcher and you want to be able to test security products or work with malware in an environment where you are confident that everything is sealed. Now, for situations like that, full virtualization can be extremely good. As I say again, they can't take full advantage of the hardware or external devices, such as USB devices, on your computer. So with partial virtualization, your computer shares its hardware resources to varying degrees. There are different types of partial virtualization. Shares your hardware between your main operating system and any other virtual operating systems that you are running. And we'll look in more detail at this in a little bit. And you can also get access to all of the devices and hardware on your computer, as well as any network resources and full internet access as well here. And partial virtualization is much better for modern computers if you need to run older software, for instance. Again, something we'll look at, because it's simply more powerful. It's not a piece of software pretending to be a PC. It is actually a PC, and it makes it much easier to get the jobs done that you need to do when you're using your virtualization tools. So when do you want to use it? Well, as I've mentioned just there, to maintain compatibility with older software is the primary reason, and it's quite possibly why a lot of you are here today, because we all have older software that perhaps won't run in the latest versions of Windows. With Windows Vista, for instance, if you're using that, software compatibility was pretty broken. It's much improved with Windows 7, but even so, some software doesn't work. I have an older piece of software, a graphics pack, ironically from Microsoft PhotoDraw, which I love to use. It's simplicity itself to use, but bits of it completely fail to operate and run in Windows 7. So I have to run that in a virtualized environment. So that's one reason. Another reason is for running different operating systems simultaneously on a single computer. So why might you want to do this? Well, you might have, let's say for example, you might have an Apple iMac and you want to run Windows on it. So you can either dual boot, so you've got both OS X and Windows 7 installed on your hard disk, and when you start the computer you can choose which operating system you want to start into. Or you can run Windows 7 in a virtual machine, a virtual environment. If you do that, it makes it much easier just to share files and share other things and other resources between the two operating systems. And that's one reason why you might want to do it. You might be testing the beta of Windows 8 when this comes out in a few weeks' time. Now, it's a beta. Remember this, it's not going to be release ready, so there'll be some things wrong with it. But you might want to evaluate it and see whether find out all about it and find out what's new in it. So rather than just wipe off your current copy of Windows Vista or Windows 7 off your computer, you might want to install Windows 8 into a virtual machine. And I'll talk a little bit, if you're interested in the Windows 8 beta, then I'll talk in a little while about the best tool for using, for getting that in a virtual environment. And the other reason is to make best use for computers' hardware. And this is primarily in the business space or the educational or scientific space, where we have you have great, enormous server farms, as you can see with this image here of big, impressive-looking multi-million-pound servers that I'm sure we'd all like, that probably look more like something that would be decorative in your garden, but they are actually computers. And these computers are, if you just do one task on them, such as run a file manager or a print manager in an office, then you're just wasting electricity, and they're just chugging through, using up excess electricity, and you're only using a tiny percentage of what they're capable of doing for that electricity use. So you use virtualization tools so that they can run multiple roles simultaneously in different operating system environments. So now let's have a look at what these virtualization options are for Windows 7, also for Windows Vista, and we'll look specifically in a little bit about what is the best tool for you to use if you want to virtualize the Windows 8 beta. Now, the most common one, the one most people have heard about, is Windows XP mode. So what is it? Windows XP mode is a free download from Microsoft. If you just search online for XP mode, it'll the first search result will take you straight up to the Microsoft website where you can download it. It will install in Windows 7 Professional and above. That's it. Won't install in Vista. It will only install in Windows 7 Professional, Windows 7 Enterprise, and Windows 7 Ultimate, because Microsoft consider it to be a business feature. So what is it? As I say, it's a complete version of Windows 7 Professional with Service Pack 3 integrated into it, and it's a full version of XP in a virtual machine. And I'm going to have a look a bit more about Windows XP mode a little later on, because it is such a useful tool for older software, maintaining compatibility with older software in Windows 7. Next up here, I mentioned that it only runs in Windows 7 Professional and above. If you're running Windows 7 Home Premium and you want to use XP mode, you don't have to go out and buy a full copy of Windows 7 Professional. You'll have a piece of software that you will find in your Start menu and in your control panel called Anytime Upgrade. And if you search for this and run it, then you can upgrade your operating system in place to another version of Windows. There is a charge for it. You buy it online on the Microsoft website, but it's much significantly less than the cost of going out and buying a new operating system. So if you're running, as I say, Windows 7 Home Premium, you want Professional, or maybe you want to go all the way and get Ultimate because you want support for BitLocker security or similar, which is only in the Enterprise and Ultimate versions, then searching for Windows Anytime Upgrade in the Start menu will bring up this option for you, so you can upgrade Windows 7 in place. Next up is Microsoft Virtual PC. Now, you'll see this is Microsoft Virtual PC 2007 because it was discontinued. Microsoft still support it because it's still useful, and a great many people use it. Now, the difference between XP mode and Virtual PC 2007, because they're based on the same product, is that XP mode is a partial virtualization solution, so that your virtualized copy of XP can still get access to things like USB devices and such. The original Virtual PC, which you can see there's a bit.ly link here where you can find it at, or you can search for it online, it is full virtualization. So it mimics the entire workings of a computer. So you don't have, it's nowhere near as flexible or as powerful. This is why it was replaced. Also, with these virtualization options, certainly with Virtual PC, you cannot run a 64-bit operating system in it. It simply won't support it. It's too old for that. But for some uses, for limited testing, perhaps for security testing, where you want that full virtualization, it can be a good option. Then we go up to the daddy, VMware. VMware rules the roost when it comes to virtualization. It's not free. It's primarily a corporate solution, and there's versions for the desktop. There's versions for servers, for Windows Server. There's versions for OS X on Apple Macs. There's versions for GNU Linux. You can run VMware on just about anything, and there's VMware clients that you can get for mobile devices such as tablets and even smartphones, so that you can control and access other devices remotely. VMware, as I say, is the daddy. It's immensely powerful. It's not cheap, but if you're after a comprehensive virtualization solution, you simply won't get any better than VMware. But what if you want to run the Windows 8 beta? If you want to run the Windows 8 beta, I recommend VirtualBox. Currently, VirtualBox is the only free virtualization software to fully support Windows 8. Because with Windows 8, Microsoft have changed various items such as the startup system and the boot system. And if you try it in Virtual PC or you try it in other virtualization software packages, it won't work. You won't get it installed. VirtualBox you can download for free from virtualbox.org. And while it isn't perfect, and it can be a little bit technical and fiddly, it's not actually very difficult. They say on the website it's technical, but I think they're just covering themselves. While it can be a little bit fiddly, you will get support for Windows 8. The only thing you won't get support for is touch. So if you have a touch screen on your computer or on your laptop or your tablet and you run Windows 8 in a virtual machine, the touch won't work. And there's no way around that at the moment because currently, as of the time that Groundhog Day here, this is going out, no virtualization solutions will support multi-touch displays. But VirtualBox is the one to use if you want to download and try the Windows 8 beta when it becomes available later this month. By the end of February 2012, Microsoft have said. Now, looking forward to Windows 8, if you're already familiar with Windows Server, then you may have heard of a product called Hyper-V. Now, this is Microsoft's own partial virtualization client, what's called a Type 0, a Type 0 hypervisor, one that can get complete access to your processor, your memory, all your devices, all your network shares and everything. It's incredibly powerful software. It's as powerful as VMware. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it is being built into Windows 8. Now, details currently are a bit sketchy. It is assumed that it will only be in the Professional, Enterprise and Ultimate editions of Windows 8. However, there's also a rumor going around that there will only be one version of Windows 8. I don't know how true this is. I don't really believe it, even though somebody at Microsoft told me himself. So we don't really know. We also don't know whether or not it's going to have the same very technical interface on the front of it that it does in Windows Server 2008, or whether Microsoft will put a friendly wizard-type front end on it. Because Microsoft, if you look back traditionally at Windows 98, Windows 95, Windows XP, there's wizards everywhere. Microsoft are brilliant at them, although, frankly, they put in quite a lot. So this is being built into Windows 8, and it will be there. Perhaps only in the professional ones. So if you want to use full virtualization, because XP mode won't be available for reasons I'll explain in a minute, if you want to use virtualization, when you upgrade to Windows 8, and you have, and if they have, the different editions like Professional, Enterprise, Ultimate, Home Premium, I would suggest you aim for those top three, Professional, Enterprise, and Ultimate, or where you won't get Enterprise in a retail shop. Aim for those because those will support this Hyper-V virtualization software. So that's the different options. So what are the benefits? Now, I've spoken a little bit so far about the benefits of virtualization, but I want to look at some of these in a bit more detail. Now, I mentioned that you can share your computer's hardware with an operating system that is essentially running in a piece of software. Now, with the full virtualization, I've said that this piece of software simulates an entire computer, which basically means it's slow and it's clunky. If you have partial virtualization, then your actual computer's hardware can be shared. Let's say, for example, you have here, we've got one operating system running on a quad-core, i.e. a 4-core processor. So you've got that one operating system taking advantage of all 4 cores on your your processor, your Intel or AMD processor. Now, if it's not really doing much, you can potentially run 4 different operating systems simultaneously, and they can each have their own core on that processor. You could have 4 gigabytes of memory, for instance, 4 sticks of memory in your computer, and each, depending on the software you use and how they actually support the hardware split, it's better with processors than with memory, you can split each one of those memory cards. You can dedicate it to a specific virtual machine. Now, the advantages of this are that you don't have one core on your processor doing something for one virtual machine and then doing something for another virtual machine and getting that pause when it has to stop, with one virtual machine and then ignore that for a while and then go on to another. With the latest virtualization software, it will, you can have a single core or a single memory card dedicated entirely to that virtual machine, so it's running constantly. So you're getting the full benefit from it. So if you do need to use virtualization, this is certainly the best way to configure it, because this is the way that you can guarantee that it won't be buggy or laggy, and it will run smoothly. However, you shouldn't run too many of them, because the more you ask your computer's physical hardware to do, the slower it will ultimately become. So if you need to run an awful lot of virtual machines, then you're going to need a very powerful, very fast, modern computer to do it on. This poor fella here in the picture with his laptop has obviously picked the wrong machine, and he's decided to take a nap while it does something. Now, in Windows 7, there was a new feature added so that you could actually boot your computer from a virtual machine. So you can add it to the Windows 7 boot menu. Now, first of all, you can only do this with a virtual machine of Windows 7 or Windows Server 2008, so it's quite limited. But also, why might you want to do this? Surely if you want to dual boot, you just create 2 partitions, or you have 2 hard disks on your computer, and you install a copy of Windows in each one. So why would you want to, why would you? Well, the best reason that I can give you is that you may want to do one of either 2 scenarios. Either have a Windows 7 virtual environment that you can boot from that can be repaired very quickly. Let's say, for instance, you work in a library or you run an internet cafe, and you need, in just short order, to be able to repair an installation of Windows. Well, if you have a virtual machine, this virtual machine is essentially just one big zip file containing the operating system and all the installed software. You keep a backup copy of that file, then all you need to do is boot into the proper installed copy of Windows 7, copy that file back from the backup, and in about 10 minutes, that's it, it's done, and you're guaranteed to be working again. The other time you might want to do it is if you want to swap in and out custom operating systems. So you might have, let's say you're in a work environment, you can set up a dual boot Windows 7 system whereby the main Windows 7 system on the computer is one that only you as the systems administrator have access to, but the virtualized one might support a variety of roles. There might be one for the accountancy department, there might be one for designers, there might be one for the mobile sales team, and they all need their own software, and they all need these configured in the same way. Well, if you do it this way, then every physical computer will all be set up identically. It's just that after you've done that, you can copy onto that computer the custom virtual machine that particular person needs. So if you then have a laptop from someone in the sales team, and that goes to a designer, you don't need to re-image the entire laptop and reinstall everything on the laptop. All you need to do is copy over the new virtual machine, set the boot menu to boot into this virtual machine, which it will be done anyway, and a sales laptop suddenly becomes a designer's laptop. It's a really powerful way to do this. It's quite complicated, so I detail how to do this in depth in Troubleshooting Windows 7 Inside Out in my book. So let's have a look at how we're going to virtualize Windows XP in Windows 7, which is what you're most likely at the moment to want to do to maintain compatibility with your older software. Now, one thing I have to stress at the beginning, Windows XP is nearing the end of its life. It is already out of mainstream support, which means that there will be no more service packs, there will be no more upgrades to it. In April 2014, extended support will end. After this time, Microsoft will provide no security patches, no malware patches, nothing. Not a dicky bird, nothing at all. And despite the number of people and the number of businesses who find that Windows XP is as comfortable as an old shoe and they want to stick with it, and are saying to Microsoft, no, you're going to have to carry on supporting it, I very much doubt that Microsoft will, because they've been desperate now to get people off Windows XP. They were too late in getting Windows Vista out the door. That was already 2 years late, and when it arrived it was rubbish. So nobody moved to Windows Vista, and by the time Windows 7 came along, Windows XP had been around for almost 10 years, and people were just happy with it. So this is why I don't think there's going to be any Windows XP support, not official support anyway, in Windows 8, because before Windows 9 comes out in 2015, the full support life cycle for Windows XP will have ended. So this is something that you need to be aware of. But is there life after XP? Well, currently we don't know. We don't know what the situation is with Hyper-V in Windows 8, except that it's there. There's been talk previously of something called Windows 7 mode, and if you've currently got software that will only run in Windows XP, as I have with this Microsoft Photo Drawer, which is ironically a Microsoft product, then there's a big question mark. We don't know what the situation is. You may have to take the risk. Now, what you can do then is that you can run it in a fully virtualized environment. You can seal it off from the internet, seal off this software from all of your hardware, from all of your hard disks, so it can't see anything. It cannot see your hardware, it cannot see your hard disk, it cannot see your network shares, and it cannot see the internet. And if it can't see any of those, there's a good chance that it will be safe, secure, and it won't get a virus infection. But there are still no guarantees. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, the advantages of XP mode, I mean, it's great, because any software you install in XP mode, you don't need the XP desktop up on your screen, taking up space and looking, well, some people like it. Any software that you install will appear in the Windows 7 Start menu, and will run from that, and it'll look like XP on the Windows 7 desktop, but it'll just run on its own on the Windows 7 desktop, and it's absolutely brilliant. So here you can see there's an image there of a Windows 7 program and an XP program running just on top of each other. So it's extremely good in that respect. You can also pin software to the Windows 7 taskbar that you install into XP mode to make it even easier and quicker to run. So that's great. But you need to maintain, and I highlight Windows XP here, because Windows XP, frankly, is a security nightmare, especially if anybody uses Internet Explorer 6 in it. But any operating system that you run in a virtualized environment still has to have its own security. And this is why this end-of-life thing for Windows XP is such a big deal. So you need to make sure that if you run an operating system in a virtualized environment and it has access to your hard disk, to your network, to the internet, to USB devices, it can still get malware it can still get a malware infection in it. So you need to make sure that it's updated, that it has its own antivirus protection, and anti-malware protection, and it's a bit of a pain. But this is where the full virtualization, where it just can't see anything, can come in handy. And it may be what Microsoft do with Windows 8 and XP, but again, we don't know. Now, with XP mode settings, you'll see Microsoft Virtual PC listed in the Start menu, and Windows Virtual PC, listed in the Start menu. And if you open that, then at the top of the window in the blue toolbar, you'll see a Settings button. And in the Settings button, you can control all sorts of things. You can add and remove extra hard disks, control access to hardware. There are all manner of settings there that you can use and that you can access. And it's very flexible and it's very configurable. And once you've got XP installed as well, you can add extra virtual machines using the XP mode software. They won't all run the same as XP mode does. They won't integrate in your Start menu, but software won't integrate into the Start menu rather. So you'll have to run it, as the full operating system desktop. But you could have Windows 8 there. You could have, when Windows 8 is supported by this software, which currently it isn't. Remember, Virtualbox for that at the moment. You could have a copy of Linux running in the background, or something else. And also, when it comes to using USB devices with XP mode, it's not this Type 0 hypervisor I've mentioned, where it automatically has access to all of your hardware. It's still a sort of upgrade on the fully virtualized virtual PC, but there is a USB menu at the top of the desktop, Windows XP desktop window. You can open the Windows XP desktop and you can attach USB devices, and it will remember, or at least it should remember if it does it right, that you've attached something, and you don't need the XP driver. What Windows 7 will do is it has a bridge driver, so use your Windows 7 driver, and it will use that with this bridge to get it working in Windows XP. So, what I want to do is, I gather we've got an awful lot of questions, but next I want to look just at using virtual hard disks in Windows 7 and what they are. Now, a virtual hard disk is the same as a virtual machine, in that it is essentially a big zip file with with loads of files in it. A bit like an ISO, if you're used to having disk ISO files, which is an image file of a CD or a DVD. But you can create these in Windows 7, and you can mount them as actual hard disks in Windows 7. Situation's not it's not perfect, but it's useful. So here you can see you can create and attach them. You do this in the Computer Management Console, and on the next slide here. Yep. Let's look at how we do this. First of all, to get into the Computer Management Console, open your Start menu, right-click on the word Computer in the right-hand side of the Start menu, and from the context menu that appears, select the word Manage. This will open the Computer Management Console. You'll then want to go to the Disk Manager, which you'll see a list in the left-hand column of the Computer Management Console of the various options that are there available to you, and you'll want the Disk Manager, so you'll click on that. So once you're in there, you'll see in the menu at the top under the Action menu, you've got options for creating a VHD, a virtual hard disk, or attaching a VHD, a virtual hard disk. So if you create a VHD, you can create this. It is essentially, as I said, a file anywhere on your computer or on your network or on a USB hard drive, and you can create it in any size that you want, obviously up to the maximum available maximum size that's available. It's not compressed in any way. And then in the action menu, again in Computer Management Console, you can attach this virtual hard disk and assign it a drive letter, and Windows will effectively treat it as another hard drive. Now, this is kind of in lieu of Windows 7 not being able to attach ISO files in the same way. Windows 8 can attach ISO files. Now, it does have drawbacks and downsides. For starters, you can't set it to automatically reattach the virtual hard disk whenever you start Windows, unless you have something like a PowerShell script, which is a powerful command scripting language in Windows, to do this for you. Now, if you have a little search online, there are PowerShell scripts that will do this, but it won't automatically reattach. So there are downsides. But that's a virtual hard disk, and that's how you can attach it. As I say, being able to attach an ISO file as a drive is an option in Windows 8. That is in there. I don't know if this virtual hard disk system has yet been rectified in Windows 8 because we haven't seen the beta yet. But hopefully, they will have fixed it. So that's that. We've got loads of questions in a minute. I just want to let you know about the other webcasts I've got here at O'Reilly coming up until almost the middle of June here. So next month, it's always the first Thursday of the month, my webcast. In March, building a bomb-proof backup strategy, literally a backup strategy that will survive, well, maybe not a nuclear bomb, but hopefully we're not going to get one of those. That backup is so important. It's ever more important, especially, not just in business, but in our home lives, because we have all our memories now are on computer, our digital photos, our music, everything's on the computer. So that's on March 1st, and then in April, how we can manually remove viruses and malware from Windows. In May, building and upgrading a PC, and in June, managing family safety. So these are the ways in which you can keep in touch with me. This is my website. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and you can email me directly at mike@mvps.org. We'll take questions now, but I have an open mailbag, and feel free to email me your questions. Sometimes I miss the odd one or two, but I always try and answer all the ones that I can. And Facebook and Twitter, Facebook especially, are always kept up to date with all my latest articles, news, and even sometimes competitions and giveaways, so everything is all there. So thanks very much. Yasmina, do we have some questions?
Hi, Mike. We sure do. We have a lot of good questions that came in. Alrighty, let's take them as they came in the order. John asks, hypervisor equals partial virtualization, and he has a question mark.
There are so many different types of virtualization software that act in different ways that it really is a case of whatever it is you're looking at. I'd recommend that you read up on it. As I understand it, a hypervisor is a virtual machine. It's another descriptive term, and you have different types: type 0, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and it all describes how much is virtualized. So in a type 0 hypervisor, type 0 virtual machine, nothing is virtualized. Your full hardware is shared, and all of your resources are actually physically shared. All your physical hardware is shared. Then you go up to, as you go up the different types, more and more of your hardware is actually virtualized and simulated.
Great. All right, we do have several more questions. Let's see here. Ilya asks, VirtualBox can use host machine USB devices? Mike says that this is available only with partial virtualization. I guess he wants clarification.
So it depends on the on the PC, on the virtualization software itself. Microsoft Virtual PC, which is full virtualization, can, to a limited extent, give you access to USB devices, but it can be clunky. If you have full virtualization, then it's going to be difficult. VirtualBox isn't full virtualization; it's partial virtualization, so it will make it easier to access your USB devices. And with VirtualBox, as I say, with VirtualBox, it can be a little bit technical because they're not aiming at end users or consumers. But yes, you can do that.
Great, thank you. Another question here. Can you install multiple copies of WinXP Virtual or only one copy?
You can only install one copy of Windows XP in Windows XP mode. I ought to point out any operating system with Windows XP mode contains a fully licensed copy of Windows XP that Microsoft give you. If you install any other version of Windows in a virtual machine, say a second copy of Windows XP, you have to have a license for that, and it will want to activate. But with Windows XP mode, you can only have one, and you can't it won't let you install a second copy.
Okay, and we have here Lawrence asks, how does Virtual PC communicate with hosts USB? Also, is Internet available?
Is what? Sorry, I missed that last bit.
He asks, is the Internet is available? I'll just read the whole question again. How does Virtual PC communicate with hosts USB? Also, is Internet available?
With USB and Internet access in Microsoft Virtual PC, they're not automatically available. You need to configure them and turn them on. For instance, to access the Internet, you need to tell it you need to share access to your network adapter. So, as I say, with full virtualization, such as Virtual PC, you can access all of these things, but it's harder to do and it's fiddlier to do than it is with the more modern products.
Great, thank you. Okay, Richard. Richard asks, he says, I have an old Epson scanner on an XP PC. The software, I downloaded the latest, will not run under Win 7. I tried the virtual machine option to no avail.
Right, this is where people can have problems. If you're installing XP mode specifically to run older hardware, then you can encounter issues. What I would recommend, you say, Richard, you tried the virtual machine option to no avail, but I'm not sure which one. If you tried XP mode, and on the XP desktop in XP mode, tried installing the scanner there, because you may find that if you then use XP mode with the XP desktop on the screen, then you may get some joy with it, attaching it via USB that way. But there are all sorts of problems with older hardware, and it's better to try and find either a compatible driver, and remember the drivers for Windows Vista will work in Windows 7 as well, or to use the hardware driver compatibility options in Windows 7, because trying to use virtualization for compatibility of older hardware is a pain.
Thank you very much, Mike. Okay, James. James would like to know, if I am using Windows 7 Enterprise 64-bit and install Windows XP mode, will the XP act like 32-bit XP or a 64-bit XP machine?
No, XP mode is 32-bit. The 64-bit version of Windows XP was withdrawn not that long after it was released, because hardware manufacturers didn't want to write hardware drivers for it. So XP mode is 32-bit only.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. Karin asks, if I want to install Linux on my Windows laptop, What should I go for? Please mention some advantages and disadvantages. Thank you.
If you want to install Linux, if you want to do it in, I mean, you can dual boot it in Windows 7 without any problems, as long as you've got Windows 7 installed first, because the boot manager has been tweaked and is slightly different. If you want to install it in a virtual machine, then I would probably recommend VirtualBox at this stage, because there's a wide range of support for Linux builds in VirtualBox, very wide range of support. And if you're happy using Linux, you'll be happy using VirtualBox and configuring it. If you want to use it in Windows 8, then there's a big question mark over whether or not you'll be able to dual boot. There is a new system that's being introduced in Windows 8 called Secure Boot, which is virus and malware protection, but it can stop you from dual booting your computer into other operating systems. And dual boot and Secure Boot, the encryption keys to this will be controlled by the company you buy your computer from. So if you buy your computer, if you built your computer yourself, for instance, then and it has the new Secure Boot system when these come out, then you won't have any problems because it will be fully unlocked. But if you buy from HP or Dell or Acer or another similar company and they've decided to lock this down, you may find yourself unable to dual boot into Linux with Windows 8.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, just a couple more questions here. We have one from Linford. Linford asks, how can I make a USB device automatically attach in WinXP mode when booting up?
Scripting is probably going to be the only way you can do it. Windows XP mode ought to, if you attach a device, then there's no reason why it wouldn't remember that you've wanted to attach that device. But if it's in a different USB socket, it'll forget it. Even I suppose if you've even unplugged it and plugged it in again, it will probably forget it. There will no doubt be ways to script this using something like PowerShell or similar. And I'd have a hunt around. The Microsoft Answers website is extremely good. It's extremely good for that.
Fantastic. And one final question from Alex. Alex says, can I virtualize Mac OS X in Windows 7?
No. You'll never be able to. And the reason that you can't is because, two reasons. Firstly, Apple modify the operating system to look for a specific signature in the computer's BIOS, which can, in theory, be synthesized in a virtual machine, but nobody knows what it is, that the operating system's looking for. So it won't boot. And the other reason is that the Apple don't make the driver support available. The drivers are always all built into the operating system in a way that they wouldn't run in a virtual machine. So you can't. It's disappointing. Many people have tried. Some people over the years have even claimed to have succeeded, but nobody's really been able to pull it off, and it is a shame. All I can suggest is that you buy yourself, as your next computer, an iMac, because they are lovely, even if they are a bit pricey, and you run Windows 7 as in a virtual machine on that using software like Parallels.
Oh, perfect. And it looks like, one final one just came in, Mike. Can I use VMware over VBox?
I have no idea on that one. If you email me, I'll try and find out. Oh, or do you mean install a virtual machine inside a virtual machine? If you're talking about installing a virtual machine inside another virtual machine, no, you can't. But if it's something else, email me and I'll try and find out.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike, for all your time today, for such a wonderful presentation, and for answering the questions that came in. Folks, thank you so much for sending in your questions. Having those questions just adds that much more to our events, and we do appreciate it. We'd like to remind you all that Mike is doing a whole host of webcasts with O'Reilly. You can visit O'Reilly.com/webcasts look under the Microsoft option, and you can register for free for all of his webcasts. And he's got some really great ones lined up. Mike, thank you so much today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. This will conclude the webcast. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.